been suffering 15 months of genocide. He was detained previously by the Israeli occupation forces and has lost family members, including his son, who was killed by Israel. Despite his personal tragedies and everything he witnessed during this genocide, Dr. Abu Safia remained steadfast and refused to leave his position at the hospital out of duty for his patients and his people. He stood up against a brutal regime that kills everything in its way. He stood up to protect his people and did a lot of heroes from Gaza, whether they were doctors, journalists, first responders, or otherwise. On December 27, after months of siege of northern Gaza and weeks of siege against the Kamal Adwan hospital, the Israeli occupation forces were able to get to Dr. Abu Safia again and arrest him along with many others. He was beaten up, stripped, and used as a human shield. Then he was taken away to join over 10,000 Palestinian political prisoners. Israel has been abducting Palestinians daily for decades, whether in the West Bank, occupied territories, or Gaza. Palestinian prisoners lack any kind of basic human rights inside these Israeli prisons, from medical treatment to clean drinking water. For the past 14 months, their situation only worsened. Palestinian prisoners are being tortured daily. They are deprived of food, bathroom access, legal assistance, clean clothing, and even sleep. Recent released prisoners have shared stories on the gruesome torture techniques being used by the Israeli soldiers inside these prisons, which include rape, electrocution, cigarette burns, waterboarding, and laceration of their body parts. The systemic abuse of Palestinian prisoners is part of official Israeli policy under National Security Minister Ben Gvir. A lot of these prisoners are administrative detainees, which means that they are being held without trial or charge. There are currently over 300 Palestinian children being detained in Israeli prisons. These prisoners are the compass of our struggle. Abu Safia and many others are what keep the Palestinian cause alive. Their resilience, despite unimaginable suffering, is a symbol of unwavering resistance, and their sacrifice fuels the collective spirit of those who continue to fight for justice. While their bodies are confined within prison walls, their spirit and their determination are free. The abuse they endure is not just an attack on their individual dignity, but an assault on the very principles of human rights and justice. The struggle of Dr. Abu Safia and all political prisoners is a testament to the strength of the Palestinian people. We refuse to be broken, even in the face of relentless oppression. Their courage reminds us that the fight for freedom and justice is not just a battle for land, but a fight for humanity itself. The voices of these prisoners must be heard, their stories must be told, and their struggle must not be forgotten. Their liberation is linked to the liberation of all Palestinians, and the struggle of their rights is a call to action for all who believe in justice and equality. We demand the release of Dr. Abu Safia. We demand the release of all Palestinian prisoners. We demand the siege to be lifted of Kamal Adwan, northern Gaza, and Gaza as a whole. We demand the Canadian government impose a two-way arms embargo and sanctions on Israel. We salute Dr. Abu Safia and all Palestinian prisoners for their resistance and steadfastness. Our liberation will not be complete until they are free, and they will be free. Long live the revolution, free Palestine! Free Palestine! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo!
Next, we have joining us virtually Ms. Francesca Albanese, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. Health workers gathered today. We want to really extend a special thank you to her for her outstanding continued ability to recognize and take a stand against genocide and apartheid, wherever it has been, and her ability to speak against settler colonialism. Thank you.
Okay, that's a bit weird. Hello, everyone. I don't know how you see me from a phone, but I've been seeing you for a while, so I hope it works. It's immense for me to be able to connect and be there, even if just in spirit, but there is so much that we can do with a good spirit for this vigil. And I thank those of you who made it possible. Of course, I acknowledge the wonderful people whose land you stand on today, and I've had the privilege to meet some of them from various backgrounds when I was in Canada, and what I've learned from them will stay with me forever. Including the fact that if we stand together, indigenous people, former settlers, ongoing settlers, people who come from the land where colonialism was conceived and started and sprouted, we need to do better than what we have done in the past, and now it's necessary. This vigil, what you are holding, is again necessary and overdue. Today, medical professionals, medical personnel, health workers from all over the world are waking up. Much more than they've done before. Because what has happened in the past 2 months is yet another escalation of the violence that has been used against the Palestinians in Gaza. The torment that has been inflicted on the Palestinians today, as a face, right today, is Dr. Hussam Abu Safie, whose fate is unknown to us. We don't know exactly where his status, where he is, what his health, but we have reasonable grounds to believe that as previous doctors and previous Palestinians who have been abducted, captured by Israel in Gaza, might be severely mistreated, because this is what Israel does to the Palestinians. And if it's not time now to react, after 2 months in which we have seen Dr. Abu Safie continuing to inform the people outside Gaza about the horrible conditions that Gaza patients and doctors and others were under. Dr. Abu Safie has held the ground against the advancing takeover of Palestinian land from a hospital. He has refused to leave a hospital, remaining more than loyal to the medical oath he took. And he has stayed in the hospital with his patients, with his colleagues, with the refugees who had sought shelter in the hospital. And he's been punished in the most abhorrent way. He had already been arrested in early December and released because there were no charges against him. He had been punished because his very son, was killed. Probably, it's not hard to imagine that it's an act of retaliation because of the obscenity of this doctor not to want to evacuate the hospital. And he has stood the ground defending his hospital until the very end. That walk that he took away from the hospital to enter an Israeli tank is the last images that we have of him. And he has become the face of a resistance that shouldn't be on the shoulders of doctors and nurses or patients or children or mothers and fathers. It shouldn't. But we have left the Palestinians alone. So what this moment tells us, the fact that Dr. Abu Safie has become the face of the resisting humanity in Gaza, it tells us that we need to continue to humanize the Palestinians who have been completely erased in their humanity from the public discourse that dominates in the West, including in Canada. And the denial of their humanity is something that we know, that we have seen before. This is something that indigenous people in Canada, like in the States or in Australia, know very well. But this is also something that we in Europe know very well, because as an Italian, this is what I've been taught as I was growing up, that this has been the main ingredients that has made possible the Holocaust of the Jews and others in Europe. This indifference to the crying humanity of the other. And we need to uphold international law. And this is what I want to say to all of you. Canada is in breach of its international law obligation, like many other states. Surely it's in good company, but this must end. And there is only one force that can lead to this change. It's you. You, responsible Canadian citizens, you, responsible human beings. There is no other way that international law can be made central to the decisions of the Canadian government, the current one and the next one. So it's necessary that policymakers are called upon their responsibility not to engage with Israel. And this is why, in the context of Dr. Abu Safieh's abduction and possible torment inflicted in one of Israeli jails, in the face of the fact that over 1,050 medical personnel have been killed, all hospitals in northern Gaza have been decimated, destroyed, and what remains is very little, including in the rest of Gaza. The entire health infrastructure has been destroyed. This is why I called on medical personnel to create a movement to stop this, because politicians will not do that until there is a disruption in each country, and the disruption can only come with a cutting of ties. This is what the government should do. Of course, it's a drastic measure. Of course, it will imply a drastic change, and including it will damage both Israelis and Palestinians for sure, but there is no other way around, other than calling for an intervention to protect the Palestinians on the ground. And of course, this is even less imaginable than the rest. So please, stay strong, continue to hold your government accountable, continue to hold the businesses, the charities, and anyone who trades and partner with Israel in the time of a genocide accountable. Do not forget, please, that the occupation is illegal as a whole. Israel shouldn't have its roots on the ground anywhere in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem. This is by international law the only place that remains to the Palestinians to vindicate their sole right to self-determination. Because of course in Israel there are Palestinians as well, but statehood has been recognized. That there will be one state or two states doesn't matter, but Palestinians have that right recognized by international law, that Israel must relinquish its presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. Therefore, any discussion that from your government that doesn't revolve around the relinquishment and the dismantlement of the occupation has no meaning, no sense whatsoever. So stay strong, continue the fight. It's going to be long, but I'm sure that together we can win both the genocide and the apartheid regime. Thank you.
Is going to be Dr. Suzanne Schusch. That's spelled Suzanne Schousch. And Dr. Schusch is a physician.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Suzanne Schusch. I am a mother, a physician, an intergenerational survivor of the Indian residential school system through my mother, and the daughter of a Sudanese father. I have almost 15 years of experience providing medical, emergency, and trauma care in communities with no hospital, no clean water, no ambulances, inadequate medical supplies, inadequate food and shelter, and totally substandard basic infrastructure. And I am not talking about communities in Palestine. I am talking about indigenous communities here on Turtle Island. Last month, I sat in a room of brilliant Indigenous leaders engaged in conversation with UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese. We spoke of genocide as colonial erasure, highlighting the striking similarities between the genocide of Indigenous people of the Americas and the genocide of the Palestinians. It begins with a deranged belief that there is a righteous justification to take land by force for resettlement and resource exploitation. And in this, Zionism is no different than the Vatican-sanctioned and now repudiated and disgraced doctrine of discovery. Settler colonialism will always end in genocide. A couple of weeks later, I was invited to join a call with Dr. Hussam Abu Sufia as he hunkered down in his hospital that has become a graveyard. We discussed the international efforts being made by healthcare providers to oppose the genocide, efforts that Dr. Hussam was learning of directly from us, as the Canadian government and media have been shamelessly complicit, preferring to lose all credibility rather than acknowledge what we can see with our own eyes. Shame. Dr. Abu Sufia, currently abducted and held in an unknown torture facility by Israeli forces, acknowledged and thanked us for the risks that we are taking in speaking out against the genocide. This was as he described the totality of the annihilation of northern Gaza, as he described streets strewn with decomposing bodies, dead children being eaten by dogs, entire kin lines eradicated, mass starvation, the savage targeting and mass murders of medical professionals, and the killing of his entire surgical team, and the killing of his own son. It was a deeply disturbing and shameful wake-up call to know that while healthcare providers in Palestine are facing imminent death, so many here in Canada remain silent, afraid of the risk of speaking out. What risk? The risk of being called to the office? The risk of being harassed online? Or the risk of losing career opportunities? What words are left to say at this point? More journalists and United Nations workers have been killed in Gaza than any other massacre in history. Every single hospital in Gaza has been attacked, besieged, burned, or decimated. We are seeing the largest cohort of pediatric amputees in world history, with an uncountable number of children orphaned. 96% of children in Gaza feel their death is imminent, and they welcome it.
Stop the genocide!
More than 1,000 healthcare providers have been killed, while countless more are abducted and tortured in grotesque manners by the Israeli occupation forces. These are our colleagues, and yet our medical institutions and our politicians remain afraid to even express compassion. It's pathetic. Like the genocide of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, the Imperial West is responsible for this genocide. Israel could not have carried out these atrocities alone. Our government provides arms transfers, military aid, and diplomatic cover for Israel. Medical experts hold press conferences that the media chooses not to cover. We write articles that are rejected by newspapers. And too many sit passively by as our rights are eroded and police are given escalating powers to brutally suppress any opposition to the genocide. It is pathetic. And this is not a war, this is genocide. I call on the Canadian medical institutions and the Canadian government to immediately recognize and condemn the targeted destruction of healthcare infrastructure in Gaza as the crime of extermination that it is. I call for the immediate release of Dr. Hussam Abu Sufia and all Palestinian prisoners, including detained and kidnapped doctors who are being tortured and murdered in Israeli detention facilities. And I especially call for the release immediately of the hundreds or potentially thousands of Palestinian children who are detained in Israel without any charges and in clear violation of international law. I call for an immediate end to the genocide in Palestine. Canada must implement an immediate two-way arms embargo, impose sanctions, and cut diplomatic ties with Israel as it stands before two international courts on charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Moshian, thank you.
Stop killing Palestinians!
Hello everyone. I will be reading a statement on behalf of Heather McPherson, who is the NDP Foreign Affairs critic. I join you in calling for the immediate release of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. The NDP calls for the protection of the hospital and medical workers in Gaza, and we condemn the systematic assaults on Gaza's healthcare system. The Liberals and Conservatives have abandoned Canadians who care deeply about the Palestinian people and about international law and human rights. New Democrats continue to call for an end to this genocide, the release of all hostages, and immediate actions from Canada in accordance with our legal and moral obligations. Canada must impose sanctions on the Netanyahu government and a two-way arms embargo, and fully respect all international court opinions, investigations, and arrest warrants. Finally, we call on Canada to immediately recognize the state of Palestine. The Canadian government should be doing everything possible to urge our allies to take strong action, but the Liberals and Conservatives refuse. Shame. In response to their inaction, New Democrats are working with parliamentarians from multiple countries around the world to put more pressure on our respective governments to end the genocide and end the occupation. We thank healthcare workers for raising their voices for those who need it the most. The Palestinian people have a right to life, and the people of Gaza deserve our solidarity. We stand with all Canadians and all the people around the world who are fighting for peace and justice for all. Thank you.
So this again, A-L-I-S-A-G-A-Y-L-E, who is a Jewish healthcare worker.
Hi, my name is Elisa Gale, and I'm a medical secretary at a major hospital, facility in North Eastern Standing today. I'm also a member of Jews Say No to Genocide. I live and work in Toronto, the lands of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. As every speaker here today has said, it is critical to name the inextricable links between struggles and genocides from Turtle Island to Sudan, to Congo, to Kashmir, to Haiti. I stand in solidarity with all Indigenous peoples in the struggle for resistance and liberation. I am so honored to be here today and filled with gratitude to be in community with so many incredibly courageous and caring people of conscience. I am deeply inspired by so many amazing healthcare folks who are absolutely relentless, unwavering, and unstoppable. They continue to raise their voices loudly, even in the face of institutional repression and anti-Palestinian racism. 15 months ago, I stood at a similar press conference alongside my fellow healthcare workers and spoke of unbearable loss. And today that loss has become an abyss of horror. To my fellow Jews supporting this carnage, last year, I rejected the conflation of Zionism and Judaism and the weaponization of anti-Semitism to justify genocide. Today, I accuse you of perverting our faith into a weapon of mass destruction. You have twisted never again and into never again for us, but always for them. You are not preserving Judaism, you are annihilating its soul. To organizations like CJA, you do not represent us. It is unconscionable and a shanda that you support Israeli occupation, apartheid, settler violence, and relentless airstrikes and mass killings of Palestinians. It is unconscionable that you support genocide. Your mission has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Clearly, your mission is to dehumanize Palestinians and foment anti-Palestinian racism. To the Canadian government, we know that this country's history and ongoing settler colonialism informs and shapes Canadian foreign policy. Here on Turtle Island, the ongoing violence, land theft, water poisoning, mass incarceration, and missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people. In Palestine, the support for the horrifying Israeli military and settler violence, land dispossession and murders in the West Bank, to the unspeakable slaughters we are witnessing in Gaza. A year ago, millions of us demanded an end to your complicity. Today, I charge you with supporting war crimes and supporting genocide. You refuse to impose sanctions, cut diplomatic ties with Israel, and you have failed to enact a two-way arms embargo. Shame. Your commitment to profits over human lives is drenched in Palestinian blood. To my healthcare colleagues who choose to stay silent. Last year, I spoke with Jimma Abdul-Latif Mohammed Al-Hajj. She was killed alongside her family. Today, we speak of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, a doctor from Kamal Adwan Hospital. Where is your outrage? Your Hippocratic oath and commitment to care does not end at our hospital doors. Healthcare workers, Jews, humans, our silence in the face of what we are witnessing is immoral and unconscionable. To those who say it is complicated or claim there are both sides, no. Last year it was genocide. Today it is genocide. And 76 years ago it was genocide. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are estimated to have been murdered by the Israeli war machine. 27 hospitals bombed and destroyed. This is not war. This is ethnic cleansing. This is extermination. I'm so sorry, I'm just going to get the must speak out. 76 years of genocide, land dispossession, apartheid, and occupation. 457 days of devastation, massacres, unspeakable images, and live-streamed suffering. 1. Flood your MPs' offices. Make them lose sleep until they act. 2. Continue taking to the streets. Disrupt. Make noise. Make them listen. 3. Support the powerful and effective BDS boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaigns. 4. Demand that our community leaders, religious leaders, politicians, and healthcare institutions put lives over profits. We are not just witnesses to history, we are its makers. And right now, history will judge us all. Will you stand on the side of justice, or will you be complicit in genocide? The choice is yours. But know this, we will not rest, we will not be silenced, and we will not stop until Palestine is free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to conclude the press conference.
being set up at the Queen's Park building. If you could please join us. Look for the large police surveillance vehicle that is there waiting for us. Please hands on. Thank you.
Most recently, the Mississaugas of the Kaiser. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Our treaty obligations and commitment include learning about the history of these lands and territory, and the structured dispossession that the indigenous nations have been and continue to be subject to by Canada. This acknowledgement is a small step in honoring the history, the land, and people of Turtle Island. We acknowledge that indigenous people are not relics of the past, that colonial land theft and violence continue to impact them to this day. As health workers and settlers on this land, we recognize that our healthcare system continues to disadvantage indigenous populations to this day. As organizers for the liberation of Palestine, we recognize the value of land acknowledgement, especially in the light of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and given the shared struggles of indigenous people worldwide. We affirm our solidarity with the indigenous peoples of the land, struggling for their self-determination and sovereignty from settler colonialism. And we recommit ourselves to the indigenous struggle on Turtle Island as a core principle of our activism for the liberation from colonialism on Turtle Island in Palestine and beyond. We have the honor to have with us today Brianna Olson Pitawanakwat, who will be doing the opening together with Ms. Kwasson from Salt River First Nation, and they will be also doing an opening from Sun. Brianna is an Anishinaabe birth worker, harm reductionist, and member of Health Workers Alliance from Kwemikwong and Ceded First Nations. Thank you for joining us, please.
Ani, Minigishka. Nimigwachandam, Kinawia. Migwach Kijamarado. Nimigwachandam, Mishkiki Naki, Ninawag. Gibe Washayaze and Nongom, Migwach Inukit, Nongom Gishka. Migwach Gaye, Shkak Makwe, Sema Nabagdana, Wabanong, Jawanong, and Bigishmok, Minwa, Giwaydnong. Nadamushin, Jamishko Gabwayan, Minwa, Jizungadeyan, Migwech, Gishamanado. Migwech to every single person who is here today. We are grateful for all of the healthcare workers who are standing with Palestine, for every other person who has made the journey here. We are grateful for this day, for the morning light when we wake up. We stand together with our hearts and minds, and we lay down our tobacco, our sema, to the four directions. We ask Creator to give us courage and a strong heart, and we stand with our thoughts in unison for Dr. Abu Safia and for all of the other healthcare workers and Palestinian citizens and people who are resisting a genocide and occupation. As Indigenous people, we stand in solidarity with our Palestinian relatives here and in their territory. Naha, Miigwech.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here today, coming to this vigil. My name is Medina, and I'm an occupational therapist and member of Healthcare Alliances for Palestine, and I'll be co-chair today with Mona. As you all know, we are here as healthcare workers, as humans of conscience, standing up in solidarity with our colleagues in Palestine. As healthcare workers, we have a commitment to preserving humanity and life and upholding our ethical imperatives to stand against oppression. We refuse to normalize and accept the genocide in Gaza, and we will not stand silent when our colleagues and kin are under attack. Israel is systematically and deliberately targeting Palestinian healthcare workers because they practice humanity and life in the face of Zionist, genocidal colonial violence. Our colleagues are being abducted, tortured, and murdered every day. Yet every single healthcare institution in this country and this world has remained complicit. The Canadian Medical Association, the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists, the Canadian Nurses Association, your legacy will forever be your complicity in genocide, and we refuse to allow you to represent us. We stand united against the dehumanizing rhetoric and politic of Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. We owe everything to the Palestinian healthcare workers who have continued to care for people despite facing ongoing genocide. We are not doing enough, and we must do more. Today we gather here on so-called Canada to demand the safe release of 450 healthcare workers, including Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital. It has been over a week since his abduction, and we don't know where he is. We don't know if he's safe. Today we will also be honoring the lives of over 1,000 healthcare workers who've been killed during the genocide. We will start with a few short speeches, then honor our martyrs. Just a few housekeeping things. We have 10 marshals with us today. It's really, really cold, so please keep yourself warm. We have hand warmers. There's a little station in the corner there with hot chocolate, tea, and coffee and snacks. So from here, I'm not going to speak much, but I will pass it on to our wonderful speakers. I would like to welcome Dr. Suzanne. Dr. Suzanne Souche is an Indigenous faculty ledge at the University of Toronto Department of Family and Community Medicine. Welcome, Dr. Suzanne.
Hi, and thank you. My name is Dr. Suzanne Souche, and I am an intergenerational survivor of the Indian residential school system through my mother and the daughter of a Sudanese father. Above all, I am a mother. This Christmas, my son fell gravely ill. Without immediate access to health care, painkillers, antibiotics, and surgery, my child would have died an agonizing and preventable death. His life was saved by pediatricians and orthopedic surgeons at Sick Kids Hospital. Pediatricians, like Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, currently illegally held in an unknown torture facility by Israeli forces, and orthopedic surgeons like Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, who died in hell, raped to death in an Israeli torture camp. It is not lost on me that should my child have been born in Palestine, he would be dead today, as are tens of thousands of Palestinian children, and anyone who could have cared for him would likely have been dead as well. More than half the population in Gaza are children. Almost every single one of them feels their death is imminent, and many welcome their death as the only escape from pain and the only way they can be reunited with their families. As I know from my mother's ancestors and my father's family in Sudan today, it is always children that bear the harshest brunt of the dehumanization and devaluation of settler colonial genocide. In Palestine, healthcare workers also bear an enormous brunt of targeting and extermination. As one of our Palestinian colleagues recently said, practicing healthcare is a crime, and the punishment is death. Death by bombs, death by snipers, death by starvation, death by abduction, and death by torture. Every day, there are fewer and fewer words left to say. As a healthcare provider, as a mother, as a human being, as we grieve, we must do all we can to make this end. May peace be upon them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Souche. Our next speaker is Dr. Najib Safiuddin, He's a thoracic surgeon in Toronto and a member of Health Workers Alliance for Palestine, HAP.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure I have a lot to add, but I'll have a few words. It is very cold today. Thank you for being here. It's warming to see everyone. I'll start directly with the story. The settler, colonial, genocidal state of Israel sends its army, bombs a hospital, burns it down, executes people, ejects patients who are starving onto rubble in the streets, on gurneys and wheelchairs with their IVs in their hands, then abducts the doctors, the nurses, the physicians, the EMS workers, sends them to concentration camps, live on screen. Live on screen. We're all watching it. And what is the response? You'd think it should be sanction, prosecution of the war criminals, but no. The response is not silence. Complicity, not silence. We need to move on from that. Complicity and enabling of genocide. Complicity. All these so-called health leaders are complicit. All of them. Not one CEO spoke out. Not one dean of medicine spoke out. Not one chair of department spoke out. Not one president of a professional organization had anything to say. And when they had something to say, it was to silence people like us. To call people to the office. They had the nerve to do that in the middle of all this. In the era of so-called equity, what they do is silence people to speak about what? The killing of physicians, healthcare workers, EMS workers. This is the hypocrisy of this place. Some data has been shared already, but more than 1,000 healthcare workers have been killed. More than 450 are abducted to death camps. More than 12,000 patients who are critically ill need to leave Gaza for medical attention are prevented from leaving, and at the rate that they're leaving at, it'll be 10 years before they get out. This is what's happening. It is not complicated. It's very simple. Very damn simple. It is not complicated. And there are no two sides to the story. There's one story. This is the story. This is it. We contrast this cowardice, this hypocrisy, this complicity with the bravery, the principle, the compassion, the care, the resistance, the dignity, the pride of the workers in Gaza. We see EMS workers holding the hand of somebody under rubble. They have no equipment to get them out. They wait for them to die until they take their last breath in the middle of a bombardment. That's the kind of people we look forward to as health leaders. We've heard of physicians having their sons killed, going to work an hour later. EMS workers picking up the bodies of their own families from under the rubble and going back to pick up some more. Those are the health leaders that I want to look up to. Those are the people I want to learn about in medical schools and nursing schools and institutions. Not the cowards that we see here. We should not mince our words anymore. There's very little that we can do from here, but at least we can speak out and call people out. We are here to honor these people. We are here to mention their names, to demand their unconditional freedom and the prosecution of their killers and murderers. We demand the freedom of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and all healthcare workers and all political prisoners. We demand an end to this complicity and to genocide. And we are not going to be silenced, and we are not going to be intimidated. We're not going to be. However few we are, however many we are, in this critical junction in history, at least we can say we were not silent. And in the end, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Now we will have a member from POAM speaking. I'd love to welcome Elias.
Thank you, and thank you for all the speakers and people who showed up for today. Just wanted to preface today before our vigil with a very brief reading from Mahmoud Darwish. He actually wrote this way back in 2002 when he himself was under siege in the West Bank. However, it still holds very true to current reality we face in Gaza. The martyr, the daughter of a martyr, sister of a martyr, the daughter-in-law of a martyr's mother, the granddaughter of a martyred grandfather, as a neighbor of a martyr uncle. But this news does not disturb the civilized world, for the barbaric era has ended and nameless victim is normalized. As the victim became, like the truth, relative. I encourage you to reflect on these words as we engage in this vigil today, and I encourage you to not normalize the deaths of our people in Gaza, as a media cycle have done, and give space to remember those who Israeli brutality have taken from us. Like infants Jum'a and Yusuf, who died from hypothermia just last week. Muhammad Hijazi, the journalist, and members of the Swakeri family, whose home got hit by a strike. These are just from beginning of this year. As this genocide is continuing in its 15 months, it's crucial to remember that it's the love and dedication, the sanctity of life that have motivated the unwavering resilience of Palestinian medical professionals from all backgrounds to combat this death machine away from their patients' bodies, even if they themselves personally have been targeted, threatened by death, detention, and arrest and torture. Of which the last episode of is the Kamal Adwan hospital that was forced to close last Friday, and its director, Hussam Abu Safia, his own son have been martyred during this war, is arrested under unknown conditions. As Palestinian youth, we ask you to continue in holding your institutions, associations, unions accountable to their atrocity, and complicity is the silence. And we further ask you to not normalize our martyrdom and sacrifice. As we reach the 456 days of this genocide, Palestinians have shown us that it's not Gaza that needs the world, it's the world that needs Gaza and us. To reflect our decaying humanity and free us from our base and shambled morals. We hope that just like Gaza once was the birthplace of God's, that its steadfastness also be the key to heal our collective wounds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yes. And our final speaker, kind of an original speaker, we have with us today Zico, who is a healthcare worker, but also a hip-hop and spoken word artist.
They don't look like me. They are me. It's the eyes. It's always the eyes. Every night. Those little girl's eyes that I saw. Those were my eyes crying on her cheeks as she slumped defeated, as she screamed while men of every ounce of energy deplete consoled her, told her not to worry, swore to her that it could not be, holding her off a gurney, passing them by, covered head to feet, except for a few strands of hair. That was my mother. You can't lie to me. I know her from her hair. That little boy's eyes that I saw, shell-shocked and shaking, a journalist's hands keeping him from falling to his tiny knees. Gray and ghostly from the rubble, eyes wide but at a loss at what he sees. As a man caresses him and asks him how is he, what happened to him. But he can barely process, eyes wandering and he cannot speak. Did they bomb you while you were asleep? He understands that, starts to nod vigorously and tries to make a sound, but is betrayed by a lump in his throat that you can feel, and a tongue heavy with grief, and the painful realization that his little body's rest had no sanctity. those mothers' eyes that I saw, like mine at work donning doctor's robes, moving between stations trying to right some awful wrongs, tending to the dead and wounded, coming and going back and forth in every second, in hospital hallways turned highways from Gaza to heaven, as they rush in by her with the next case. She stops in her tracks trying to zero in on the face, a beat, before the whole world goes mute and all sound is replaced with pain. For those other mothers' eyes that I saw, burned all our hearts with words forever and our memories seared. The kids died before they have something to eat. You think we'll forget those scenes? Those countless images burned in our memories. Eyes closed, still can't escape them like phosphines. They will interrupt our sleep and show up in our dreams. This is not some abstract exercise in empathy. This is to let you know that though you are removed by some degrees, you are next, if you let it be. Whether you take this as a heads up, or you take it as a threat. Thank you. On October 20th, a mere 13 days into the now 15-month-long genocide, Dr. Mahmoud Abu Mjayla left a note on a whiteboard in Al Auda Hospital. Whoever stays will tell the story. We did what we could. Remember us. A month later, he would be martyred, as the Zionist entity, which does not have any right to exist, conducted an airstrike on Al Auda Hospital. This was also a month after they bombed Al Ahli Hospital, and the world watched and did nothing. And our healthcare institutions here refused to condemn the explicit, unrelenting assault on healthcare workers, or call for any actions against the Zionist entity, or acknowledge the incident at all, or even their own employees as we pled with them to issue any statement of any kind. But we all remember how virtually all of them here in Toronto were so quick to condemn a costume man on a scaffolding on a moment's notice. Likely because some Zionist donors made a phone call. Today, Al Auda Hospital is in the crosshairs of the Zionist entity once more, after the complete destruction of Kamal Adwan Hospital and the displacement of all of its patients and the detention and torture of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and all the medical staff in an effort to prevent any healthcare provision to hasten the ethnic cleansing of the north of Gaza. We have failed the people of Gaza. And nothing exemplifies this failure more than the image of Dr. Safiya himself walking into the devil's hands, and God knows only what torturous fate awaits him. After weeks and weeks under siege, calling out to some world, to healthcare workers and healthcare institutions and other organizations to take action, any action, against the Zionist entity and stop the insanity, or at least lift its fingers and their hands from being complicit in the bombing of fucking hospitals. Our hospitals still refuse to even stand publicly in solidarity. Our universities still invest and partner with entities and institutions complicit in genocide. And our whole state still supports the Zionist entity and refuses to enact an arms embargo, even as international institutions they claim to be supporters of, the statutes that they are signatories to, are investigating the genocidal state for genocide and war crimes. I was asked to speak today, and I wanted to write something worthy of the moment, but in the midst of this failure and the inaction and the constant grief and anger, I struggled, as we all do, to find the words. What can be said that has not already been said, that is accurate enough, that is respectful enough? What can you write that moves people and rise to the occasion but does not fall into the false romanticism that makes us forget that these images are not images. These are real people who wanted, like every one of us here and anybody in the world, to have their coffee how they like it in the morning, go to work, and come back to their home and hug their loved ones at night. Real people going through genocide as we speak, not some distant tale for us to be inspired by. And even as I struggled with the futility or use of these words, I am guided by the need and necessity to reiterate the truth in every space, in every way, and not to give up on words. I'm guided by the Palestinian Egyptian poet Amir Baroudi's words that every beauty is resistance, and that poetry is a reclamation of sovereignty over names, like calling death martyrdom, and a reclamation of freedom. In politics, their tanks draw the borders and give my home a name. But in poetry, I name it whatever I please. All that to say, I hope you find some grace to forgive me for any flaws or shortcomings, which I'm sure there are many in this short and incomplete poem that I wrote over this last night. Those stories of old, these myths of ancients, are starting to make sense. Those who told them did not see gods, or heroes, or epic journeys facing endless armies and colossal creatures and monsters. They saw people. They saw people who wanted to go to work. And because they had a noble goal, and in their hands the fate of countless souls, and they bled and pled for some world to behold, waited for some justice to unfold, and because they, at the end alone, lived and breathed an oath, bloody unrelenting tyranny in the way was not enough to dissuade them. There wasn't any other option left but to keep the oath and never break it. These myths of old are starting to make sense. Those who told them did not see gods or heroes or monsters. They saw men and women with no option left but to face the tyranny, and swore they must immortalize them because they failed them that day. The least they deserved, the least they owed them, was to carve a permanent peace in their collective consciousness. They saw men and women with no option left but to face the tyranny. Because what is left but the rubble at his feet? A white coat, trekking gray wreckage, finding footholds in debris of shrapnel, metal, and concrete that was once a home, that was once a street. Towards a tank filled with fear where treacherous, torturous hands extend to greet. And he knows what that means. What other option is left when behind him there are still patients left to treat? What other option there is left then but be forced to face this beast? What is left but the rubble at his feet? What is left beyond binaries of victory and defeat? What is left yet to lose? What is left yet to gain? Only life itself remains. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nico, for your powerful words. We will now honor our martyrs. Absolute glory to all the martyrs whose lives have been stolen by the blood-stained hands of this heartless empire. We hold them in our hearts in every second of our service while we provide care within a system that sickens us with its complicity. We have names and photographs about a quarter of our martyrs. We will say their names and read their stories. Everyone will have a chance to take one picture and hold the photo. Please note that what we're doing is symbolic and doesn't honor all of the martyrs. And then we will finish with a moment of silence. Head of orthopedic surgery. In our life, every new day is a blessing because we're still alive. When I was studying in the UK, I had the chance to stay and bring my family. But I love too much Gaza, like life is holy for us. We have another view on life. I work as orthopedics consultant in Al-Shifa Hospital. I specialize in orthopedic surgery and complex fractures. I have a private clinic where I work, and after my work in Al-Shifa Hospital, I also teach some hours at the university. Dr. Al-Borsh was unlawfully detained and tortured by Israel. He was killed April 19, 2024. His remains have been kept by Israel. We will remember him.
I'm a family doctor, and I'll be honoring two brothers, Hashim Mundir Mahmoud al-Budairi and Abdullah Mundir Mahmoud al-Budairi. They are residents, resident doctors in internal medicine at Al-Shifa Medical Complex. They worked together to serve patients and the injured from the beginning of the war, genocide, until their martyrdom. They were martyred together with 3 other relatives on November 8, 2023.
My name is Vigil. I'm a family physician, and I'm honoring Mu'in Ziad Rabah al-Shurafa, doctor at Kamal Adwan al-Quds Hospital. Worked as an anesthesiology specialist in Kamal Adwan Hospital and resumed his work in Al-Quds Hospital during the genocide. Martyred alongside his family as a result of occupation forces targeting their home on November 7, 2023. We will remember him.
My name is Suvendrani, and I'm a neurologist at Women's College and the UHN. And I'm reading the name of Muhammad Yahya Ahmad Suleiman Adwan and honoring him. He was a doctor in the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Dr. Muhammad suffered from a chronic heart disease, but was forced to evacuate on foot towards the south. He was martyred as a result of a sniper bullet to his head by an occupation soldier on November 13th. His children carried his body on foot along the painful path over 20 kilometers to the south of the street. We will remember him.
I'll be honoring Rafat Hassan Abdelrahman Rabad, Head of Internal Medicine Department, Al-Shifa Medical Complex and University Lecturer. After refusing to be displaced and continuing to work at Al-Shifa Hospital, he was martyred alongside members of his family, his 3 daughters, his brother and his sister-in-law, as a result of an airstrike targeting his home in Gaza, November 18, 2023. We will remember him.
We honor Ayman Muhammad Hassan Salha. He was the head of the General Surgery Department at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. He was martyred alongside his wife, his 5 children, his parents, and his siblings as a result of a direct strike on their home in the middle area of Gaza on November 20th, 2023. We will remember him and his family.
We are honoring Ziad Fathi Khalil al-Tatari, specialist in pediatrics and hematology in Beit Hanun Hospital, and with Doctors Without Borders in Al-Auda Hospital in the northern Gaza Strip. November 21st, 2023, Dr. Ziad was martyred alongside Dr. Mahmoud Abu Nujayla and Dr. Ahmed al-Sahar from a direct strike on the 3rd and 4th floors of the Al-Auda hospitals while they were working as part of Doctors Without Borders team. We will remember them.
we will honor Muin Ziad Rabah al-Shurafa, specialist and anesthesiologist at Kamal Adwan Hospital. November 13, 2023, Muin was martyred alongside his family as a result of the occupation forces targeting his home. He was initially a specialist in Kamal Adwan Hospital until it became non-functioning, and he continued to work in Al-Quds Hospital during the genocide. We will remember him.
We honor Ru'a Hammam Ismail Haniya. She was a first-year medical student. And Ru'a dreamed of becoming a family doctor. November 10, 2023, Ru'a was martyred alongside members of her family as a result of a strike on their vehicle in beach camp in Gaza.
We honor Dua Jadallah Musa Jadallah, laboratory technician. The LinkedIn page of the martyr Dua Jadallah indicates that she was an intern at the Health Works Committees. On November 1st, 2023, Dua Jadallah was martyred alongside her entire family in a strike on their home in Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. We will remember them.
We honor Mohammed Rifat Maki, doctor and surgeon. Dr. Mohammed Anis Maki was martyred alongside his wife, Aida Shukri Shabir, his son, Dr. Anis Maki, his daughter, Dr. Amal Mohammed Maki, from a bomb strike on their home in Omar Al-Mukhtar Street in Gaza. We'll remember all of them.
We honor and we will remember all of them. More than 1,000 healthcare workers, more than 1,000 colleagues in Gaza have been killed since the beginning of the genocide. We could stay here for days to do them the honor and share their stories and their names. But we are going to remember them, each one of us on their own. Many of you are carrying their photos. Their memories will stick with us and for generations to come. I want to give the chance to anyone here who joined, if they want to say anything, if they want to share any thoughts before we close this event. Please feel free to come in. If anyone would like to read the name of the martyr healthcare worker you are holding, you're also welcome to do that.
I would like to honor Noor Raid Abu Hayat. She's a beloved occupational therapist, sister, and friend. I would like to read a poem dedicated to Noor, written by her friend. The place you enter is all radiant with light. She's the most innocent and spontaneous person. Her spirit is cheerful, and she's the most active alone. We all tell her that, Noor, she is like a bee and is active. Hey bee. She loved life, finding her from place to place, and her laughs bring us back the soul. She is very affectionate and did not like to see anyone grimacing or upset. Noor is remembered by her teacher, Dr. Musa Abu Mustafa. The best among my students. She was like my daughter. She was a very smart student and occupational therapy professional. She was very dedicated. Noor's father passed away a long time ago. She was raised by her mother. She had a sister with multiple sclerosis. She loved and helped her patients. She started to work in a special school for her children with autism. This is a very big loss for us and the OT profession. She was practicing occupational justice. We will remember her.
Hi, Before I share the few words about the doctor I'd like to honor, I would like to share a personal story. My parents were orphans. They were, both my mother and father were World War II orphans. Their parents were murdered brutally in genocide by Hungarian fascists during the Second World War. My mom was 4 when her father was taken away, and she used to tell me how she was waiting on the street when the war was over for her dad to come back. He never did. My father witnessed murder of his own mother on the streets of the town where they lived. They raised me not to hate anyone. They raised me to have tolerance, to value humans for what they are, to never ever look at nationality, at religion, at names, just to look for values. One thing my father, and the only thing he actually ever shared, very personal, was at the end of his life, when my mother was already gone and he was dying from cancer, he told me, I need to tell you more now, because as long as you speak their names, as long as you hold their pictures, they will never be forgotten. So let's never forget any one of these people. Let's speak their names, let's hold their pictures, let's keep their memories for what they really were. Humans, above all, professionals, incredible professionals, and in my eyes, heroes, every single one of them. I would like to honor the memory of Dr. Ahmed Hamdan, maxillofacial surgeon, killed in Gaza. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Bahira Abdul Salam. I have a PhD in civil engineering. I'm a professional engineer, and I'm greatly touched by this event and the courageous healthcare workers. And I would like to say, I'd like to call for the freedom of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. I believe that every professional has to call for his freedom, not only healthcare workers, because he taught everyone a great lesson, how committed he was to his profession. So he wasn't just doing his duty, he was committed by his ethical values, by professionalism, by the courage. So I believe that he taught a lesson to everyone in the world about his faith, about his professional. So in every hardship, there is an ease. And I believe that this genocide, in spite of the huge pain that we are suffering, we have to learn the lessons that God is sending us through those heroes, and freedom for all the healthcare workers, and the freedom for every Palestinian. Thank you.
I would like to honor Dr. Tasneem Abdul Nabi. She was a dentist. We will remember her.
Anyone else would like to share? anything?
Hi, my name's Natasha. I'm an RN. I live in Hamilton. And I'm also a cancer survivor. So recognizing that my condition would likely lead to death in Gaza makes it extra important for me to show up to rallies like these, to vigils like these, and to honor those who have already lost their lives or will imminently lose their lives in Gaza. And I just want to say that I am so grateful for everybody who has shown up today, because sometimes speaking out against genocide, for whatever reason in this day and age, feels isolating. So to be here together is so valuable. And I want to thank everyone who has shown up here today, everyone who has worked in healthcare, because this is I became a nurse because I wanted to care and I want to help people. And my ultimate goal is to work for Doctors Without Borders. And I can't sit silently at home and watch while my colleagues and fellow human beings are being murdered in front of me. And I don't want to see anybody else die in this genocide. So, free Palestine.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Deep breath. That was a lot. Okay, so I just want to take a moment to thank you all, each and every one, for joining us today to honor the unmatched courage and immense sacrifices of health workers in Gaza, who continue until this second, until today, to face horrible, unimaginable atrocities with unprecedented courage and sumud, which is a beautiful word, steadfastness. Our gathering today is a powerful testament to the strength of solidarity, of community, and to our shared commitment to the liberation of Palestine and health justice. A heartfelt thank you to everyone, but also to the organizers who helped organize this vigil in a very short period. I want to thank the organizations who supported this event, Health Workers Alliance for Palestine and PYM Toronto, who has been doing and leading a lot of the events in the city. I want to thank each and every one of you again for being here on this very, very cold day. And the dedication and the effort of everyone made this event successful. It was important that we come together to talk about this critical, urgent issue. Justice has never been more urgent, and we must continue to speak up. We must continue to stand firm in solidarity with our colleagues in Gaza and Palestine and with the Palestinian people. They are counting on us, and every single voice matters. Free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free!
To say the least. We're witnessing an ongoing genocide, an ongoing complete extermination of a people. Shame! Shame, shame on the world governments. Shame on every politician. Shame on every single person who stayed complicit. Shame! We will not abandon the people of Gaza. We will not abandon the people of Palestine. The next year to come is going to be even harder. A ceasefire hopefully will be reached soon. But that doesn't mean that our fight stops. That doesn't mean that our organizing for Palestine, Palestinian liberation, for human rights, for dignity, for the Palestinian people stops. We must ground ourselves in the quest of the Palestinian people to achieve freedom and liberation. That does not stop at a ceasefire. It begins there. Justice will be served, but all of us here must continue on that path. Talk about Palestine in your work. Talk about Palestine in your daily life. Make Palestine unavoidable to everybody who it makes uncomfortable. Make Palestine unavoidable to every single person who shies away when Palestine is being mentioned. Because our martyrs The Palestinian people are human beings. We don't just want empathy and sympathy. We want action. We want every single person here, every single person that has been called out to the protest for the past 14 months, to continue to advocate for Palestine, to be the voice of the voiceless. Our work does not stop, but it continues. So do not be discouraged. Do not shy away. Thank you so much for coming and continue to support Palestinians. Thank you so much.